Well, what are we doing to correct the mistakes of what happened last week? How are we actually doing better? Well, reopening the N3 is critical for the South African economy. That's according to Trade and Industry Minister Ebrahim Patel. He says it's important to ensure that food and medicines are stocked up in stores. Well, the N3 opened on Friday after being closed during the violent riots and looting. The minister joining us now to talk about the road ahead. Minister, good afternoon, and thanks so much for your time. As you heard the president saying there that, mistakes were made, we need to do better. So how are we actually doing better in helping these people rebuild their lives and in helping especially the province of KwaZulu-Natal rebuild itself in parts?
Well, first, thank you very much and good afternoon to you and all the viewers. Today and over the last few days, our principal focus has been to re-establish the supply chains. The South African economy is very integrated, so each province relies on goods coming from other parts of the country. Some of our key components and raw materials are imported, and of course a lot of jobs in South Africa are dependent on exports. So our principal focus now has been to work with producers, factory owners, suppliers and others to get that commercial supply chain working again. It's complemented by welfare efforts. Charities are coming in large numbers with goods from all over the country, and that is deeply appreciated, and it's very important for struggling communities. But at the same time, we've got to get the economy in KwaZulu-Natal back to full strength, because it's in the large number of shops and the supply chains that most people will be able to rely for food and other basic necessities. So there's a few things that we've done. The first has been to make sure that we are able to get the N3 operating. This is the main artery, the main economic artery of South Africa. Along that line, you have trucks every day going about with fuel, with raw materials, components, finished goods, imported products, and exported products from South Africa to the rest of the world. So getting that N3 moving again was an absolutely critical step. And we visited the Weybridge area in Heidelberg today, and by the time we met with logistics suppliers and manufacturers and others, about 100 trucks per hour were moving south from Gauteng, crammed with food and medicines and other basic products, and going down to KwaZulu-Natal to stop at towns and cities along the way, all the way down to Durban and, of course, Richards Bay. So this is one important leg. The second one is to do a proper survey of the extent of damage. Some of the retail outlets that communities rely on for their basics have been damaged, have been destroyed. Some of it can be fixed quite quickly, where it's been principally glass that has been broken. But in other instances, the damage is significantly more serious and will take more time. And so we're working with retailers to see what else can be done by way of mobile facilities and temporary facilities for stores to operate from.
All right.
The third leg is to get manufacturers going again, ensuring that they have raw materials and other supplies. So these are some of the key things we're doing right now.
All right, Minister, let's just talk practically now. And you talk about the major routes, especially the N3 now being reopened. But we understand security is still a concern. I mean, we've even heard from truck drivers saying that they are still scared. So how are we ensuring that they will be safe along that route going forward and that there is no more disruption as the supply chain starts to reconnect again?
Of course, it's completely understandable. It's been traumatic for truck drivers to go through, to see the scenes early in the week at the Moerova Plaza and elsewhere. And so we empathize with them. But the security forces have said to us now that the N3 is completely secure. Many logistics companies have confirmed that. I've spoken to the CEOs of large retailers, and they confirmed that their trucks have been able to have unimpeded access to the whole of the N3. And we saw many truck drivers and spoke with them today. But I want to emphasize, of course, having gone through the challenges of this past week, it's completely understandable that many truck drivers are still somewhat concerned and understandably worried. We saw also this morning more SANDF troops going from Gauteng down to KZN, and so as the number of personnel, boots on the ground, as they say, rises in KZN, it would enable us to secure not only the N3, but also other critical roads, arterial roads that go to major towns and settlements in KZN. So this is just the first step of a much wider set of actions that we need to do.
So, Minister, you also spoke of support for those businesses that are affected in terms of shops and retailers. So let's talk practically now. We know that, many are still reeling from COVID. Many are still waiting for that promised support from government over the past year as well, those who suffered under lockdown as well. How are you now, with this added complication of what has happened over the past week or so, how are you going to prioritize who you help and how you actually get that help to them? I mean, it's one thing to say it, but how are you going to make sure this happens? And of course, it's an urgent matter.
So the steps that we've taken so far, just getting that supply chain moving, constitutes one of the most significant ways in which businesses are being assisted. A lot of businesses had disruptions with workers not being able to get to work and goods not being able to get to their factories or their warehouses or their shops. So that's not in addition, that's a critical part of our efforts. The second part, of course, is where business premises have been damaged, is to see what we can do together. So we're looking now, working with the KZN province to map out where exactly the most serious damage has been done. A number of businesses nationally have said that they would be prepared to support. They can put teams of engineers and others together to go down to KZN and assess the damage, which would then enable us to help. Of course, a lot of the work that needs to be done here needs a secure environment. Manufacturers and retailers have said, to make this work, if government can ensure that there is stability in KZN, much of the economic and technical support can come here. The President announced on Friday that we are meeting with businesses, and government clusters are meeting to identify what are the steps for the medium to longer term economic reconstruction, where a factory has been damaged, not just looted with the stocks gone, but where machinery has been damaged or buildings have been burnt. It will take longer, and those are the steps that we will be doing. In the course of the week, we will be making those announcements. At this stage, a lot of it is assessment work to see what is the extent of the damage, how much will it cost, what are the most critical parts that have been damaged, where can we get alternative suppliers elsewhere in the country in the meantime to supply products. For example, some of the clinics that do the dialysis for patients with kidney-related challenges were damaged. And so efforts are being made now to get alternate supplies, and those supplies are moving from Gauteng to KwaZulu-Natal. So it's a range of efforts, some of them very short-term. We've got to get them done in the next few days. Others of a medium to long-term nature, for example, building new factories where they've been damaged. And a big part of it is establishing these supply chains that have been disrupted.
So how will you meet the immediate needs, though, Minister, of those whose livelihoods have gone? Of course, those who work for them. We're going to see massive unemployment, even more so now than what we, in addition to what we saw happening with COVID and businesses shutting down. How are you going to give them immediate relief? I mean, we cannot rely on NGOs and sort of the goodness of others to actually provide food, to provide that medication. So what is government doing to play its part to provide that immediate relief, especially to those who will be unemployed and those who have lost their livelihoods in this time?
May perhaps separate out two different things. So one is the immediate challenge of getting food, medicines, and other support through to affected communities. And we're working, and the NGOs and charities, by the way, this is part of active citizenship, but government has also worked with the Solidarity Fund that has announced now that they will be opening up a separate account to be able to enable the support to communities, government departments in the social cluster responsible for welfare-related measures, of course, are now looking at ways of ensuring food parcels, access to clean water, all of the basic necessities. So that's one step, which let's say it's absolute immediate in the next few days. Linked to that, and it's really a point I want to make that reinforces it. In many areas, citizens, residents have come to us and said, we've run short of baby milk, baby formula. And we've now worked with the retail sector, which has, of course, the largest distribution network. Some of them have said they would be able to fly baby formula into KZN. In fact, one retailer has indicated it's now just flown some stocks to KZN. Some of these trucks, the visuals that viewers would have been seeing on television yesterday and today going down to KwaZulu-Natal would have examples of those kind of containers. The second problem is that where people have been displaced, left without jobs. A factory is been burnt, a shop has been damaged, and there's no immediate work. And we, as has been indicated by the minister in the presidency, we are going to be making announcements in the course of the week about how to use the existing facilities and make them available. Obviously, in the course of this discussion, given that I'm focusing on getting the supply chains going, getting industrial production up, I will not be able to make those announcements myself today, but the ministers with those mandates will be making them in the course of the next number of days.
All right. Well, Minister, if I can ask you as well, we know that instigators of this, what has now come to be known as economic sabotage, have been identified. They're being investigated with regard to that. What can you tell us about how those investigations are progressing and why we haven't seen any arrests happening so far? How long does it actually take? What do you know of this process at the moment?
The Minister of Police and the Minister of Justice, I think, do a really great job in explaining the work of the security cluster. And so for that reason, I'm not going to be drawn into that. But to note the public announcements of significant numbers of arrests. I went to the Mamelodi Mall earlier today to look at the extent of the damage, to meet with shop managers and others to see how we can assist and what efforts are being made to clean up the mall so that business can resume. And what was striking is in a number of cases, luxury goods that had been looted in significant quantities, but also the efforts of retailers and others to restock. And you're seeing an energy there where people want to get back to work. So on the one hand, the security cluster must deal with the issue of holding people to account, and justice must not only be done, but there must also be swiftness to it. On the other hand, at the economic level, we need to make sure that we get those bits of the South African economy that were disrupted to get it back to work as quickly as possible.
Minister Patel, are you confident, or can you actually say that we will ever recover from what has happened this past week?
What I have no doubt about is there's a spirit of resilience in South Africa. Yes, this is going to cause damage to us. It's caused damage already. When factories are burnt, when supply lines are damaged, then it affects our gross domestic product. That's the GDP of the country, which measures the annual output. It impacts on jobs. But at the end of the day, the resilience of a nation, our ability to take that South African bounce-back spirit counts for a lot. And everyone I've spoken to, from workers to managers to owners of businesses to communities, we see now everybody is really closing ranks and saying, we've got to fix this. We need to deal with the underlying challenges. Law and order is important. We also need to build a more inclusive economy, one in which more South Africans feel that they have a significant stake. We need to increase our manufacturing output and strengthen the economy and skills. So all of these challenges, there's a new urgency that we must bring to it. So on your big question, will we recover? Of course we will recover. Will it be hard work? Yes, it will be. Will we do it overnight? No, it won't be done overnight. But that journey has already started. And South Africans are uniting around the aim of rebuilding this economy.
And Minister, I mean, it is, yes, the ideal, what you say, and if we all band together and do that, yes, but it would be pointless if economic saboteurs were allowed to continue doing their work and needling the nation as they have been over the past week. What measures have you put in place, seeing as government has admitted, yes, they made mistakes, you made mistakes when this all started just over a week ago. What measures have you put in place now to make sure that this never happens again?
Well, I want to underline that this is an assault on democracy, that it was an attempt at insurrection, at fostering really an attack on the Constitution itself, and an attempt to avoid a rule of law and people being held accountable for corruption and state capture. And for that reason, it was important not only for the state but ordinary South Africans to defend their and our democracy. The security cluster make the announcements on security matters, and so while I understand, you are doing your job as a journalist to put these questions to me, but those answers will come from the security cluster and from the presidency. My focus now, together with colleagues in the economic cluster, is to deal with the economic impact, ensure that it's done timeously, and enable as many businesses as quickly as possible to recover.
But at the same time, Minister, you also have to sell South Africa to investors all over again, I would imagine. What are you saying to them? What's the plan there? How are you getting them to either to stay in the country and not take their business elsewhere after what they've seen? And also as a member of the ANC, this goes down to just what's been happening within the governing party and the instability that remains there, that seems to be growing there, which many might say has also been key to what has happened.
Well, perhaps it's necessary to share with you my own engagements with foreign investors. Many of them were very concerned. They saw television imagery and they thought the country is on the brink of an absolute loss of governance. And as they spoke to their local managers and they saw the level of cooperation between the authorities and the business community, and they saw the outpouring of goodwill from all South Africans in defending their democracy, the picture changed. One very large retailer shared with my team an email exchange with their own head office in which South African operation was wished every success, and they indicated their full support, that they stand fully behind us, and that they will be rebuilding and strengthening their own operations in South Africa. This morning I met with the representative of a very large global food producer, and they indicated that they're getting the full backing of their headquarters in the efforts they're making to reestablish their supply chains. So yes, this was not a great story for South Africa. It's caused damage to our image, to investor confidence, to the way in which many see the country, and that results, that's not an abstract thing. That means fewer jobs and more economic loss to South Africa. But faced with this, we have one of two options. We can either complain and bemoan this, or we can say, how do we turn this around? And what we've been doing now, and what we will need to do as a society, not just as government, but as South African investors and as managers in South African businesses that are owned by big multinational corporations, is to show the preparedness to deal with a number of things. First, rule of law. The rule of law is critical, that our Constitution defines the way in which we work. It sets out the core values of the society, and no individual can trump the Constitution. Second, that even when we have suffered these losses, that we work together to fix the problems, to ensure that those factories are rebuilt. And third, that we recognize that we have unfinished business to deal with poverty and inequality and unemployment in our society. And this does set back that task. And so we need a new urgency in taking on even those challenges. So those are very, very important things and signals to the international community.
And I suppose it also...
At some of the positive sentiment that has been expressed, letters of support and even public comments that have been made that have been very positive of our efforts.
And of course, Minister, this will have to mean you're also showing a governing party that isn't compromised. How do we plan to show that? I mean, it has to start with some fixing there behind the scenes.
I'm sure you'd want to put the questions of a party political nature to the ruling party's official spokespersons. But from the economic cluster point of view, I think what we need to reinforce as a message in South Africa is that corruption and state capture has cost our society enormously. We released the results of a survey in 2017 already that showed that even a 10% overpayment in our infrastructure program alone would cost something like 27 billion rand to GDP. And so the efforts by the ruling party to stamp out corruption, to hold people accountable, is an important way of changing South Africa's economic storyline. Economics is not about having a formula that you apply abstractly. It's about concrete actions, about when people put their money in South Africa, they want to know that their contracts will be honored, that their property will be secure, that if there are disputes over matters as in any contract, that there's an independent judiciary, that the public institutions are of high quality, that there are skilled people in the country that are able to run complex production systems and logistics systems. And when we point them to some South African companies that have extraordinary capabilities and they get to know those companies, they are heartened by it, they're encouraged by it. And so we've got to walk this road now of ensuring that we defend the rule of law, that we defend democracy, and that we enable entrepreneurship. One of the issues that we recognize a lot more effort has to go on is building an environment in which small businesses can flourish to a greater extent. For a number of years, we had a challenge of economic concentration, and Parliament then passed some changes to the Competition Act not very long ago that will enable the Competition Commission to be able to deal with that economic concentration that results in the exclusion of smaller businesses. Incidentally, I should also say that two aspects that are quite important in looking at the foreign dimension is that South Africa is a big supplier of goods to neighboring countries, to Zimbabwe, Zambia, Namibia, Eswatini, Botswana, and Lesotho, Mozambique, and others. And it creates jobs in South Africa. And we spoke yesterday with the big retailers to determine the extent to which the supply lines are intact, are trucks crossing the border, able to take goods to neighboring countries. And the good news is that such disruption as there were has largely abated, and the trucks are moving across border to supply others. And the second part I want to indicate is to both global businesses and local businesses. We've issued an exemption in terms of the Competition Act that allows businesses in critical sectors, food, medicines, essential supplies, cleaning materials, fuel, and others, to collaborate, to work together, to share their supply lines, and to enable goods to reach consumers. So these are quick steps that we took that I think investors, both domestically and foreign investors, see as important.
Yeah, Minister, if you can allow me one last question here. I mean, surely many of them are asking you at this point. I would imagine, how did you not see this coming? You had warnings over a week ago. You made a mistake. You've admitted you made a mistake. How can we trust that you will not continue to make mistakes like this? What are you telling investors when they ask you that, where many see it as government having dropped the ball in a big way?
I understand it's a question that the media is asking. It's a legitimate question, and I think the President started to respond to that on Friday in very frank terms. Those are not the questions that the investors are asking us right now. Right now, they want to see that we're working with them to fix the short-term problems. I think they all are saying to us, the blame game is not going to be what is going to turn the situation around in the next 5 to 7 days. How can we get these trucks into that area? How can let me use an example. One big corporation who is in the snacks business said that the package manufacturer that does the packaging for them, that they put the snacks in, was damaged. And they're looking now to see what can be done together to find alternative suppliers. It's that level of question. It's practical questions that have practical answers that investors are engaging us on.
All right, Mr. Ebrahim Patel, thanks very much for your time. Yes, we'll have to watch and wait and see. It is urgent. There's urgent action that is needed over the next few days. People need to put food on the table.